The sun was brutal that afternoon, baking the sidewalks and turning the air thick and lazy. I sat on my porch, nursing a warm beer, when Jake's pickup rolled to a stop in front of my house. The engine coughed once before cutting off, and a second later, he jumped out, shirtless, wearing nothing but a pair of faded swim trunks that clung to his hips like a second skin. "Come on, man, you're not seriously gonna waste this day inside," he called out, flashing that reckless grin that always got him whatever he wanted. Jake had been my best friend since middle school, the kind of guy who lived life like it owed him something. Broad shoulders, tan skin, a confidence that dripped off him even when he wasn't trying. I couldn't count the number of times girls, and guys, had turned their heads when he passed. I hated how aware I was of it now. "Where are we going?" I asked, setting the bottle down and pushing off the porch rail. "River spot. Little off the trail." "You need it," he said, tossing a spare towel at me. I caught it, pretending like I had a choice. Jake had that way about him, dragging people into his current without them even realizing it. I grabbed my trunks from inside, quick-changed behind the screen door, and hopped into his truck. The leather seats scorched the backs of my thighs, and Jake laughed when I hissed at the burn. 15 minutes later, we were stomping through tall grass toward a hidden bend of the river. The water was clear, cool-looking, a ribbon of blue cutting through the green of the trees. We dropped our stuff on a flat patch of rocks, and without hesitation, Jake ran forward and launched himself into the water with a whoop that echoed off the trees. I followed slower, letting the water lick up my legs before plunging in. The river was shockingly cold, stealing my breath before settling into a refreshing chill. Jake surfaced a few feet away, hair slicked back, water cascading down his chest. "You look like you swallowed a frog," he teased, splashing me. "Fuck off," I grinned, splashing back. We wrestled in the water, the way we always did, harmless roughhousing. Except this time, every brush of skin, every accidental bump felt different. Charged. Like I was hyper-aware of every inch of his body against mine. I told myself it was just the heat, the beer still buzzing in my veins. Just friendship, that's all. Jake dumped me under, holding me down a second longer than necessary. When I broke the surface, sputtering, he was laughing, wiping his eyes. His swim trunks clung tighter now, plastered to him by the water. My gaze flicked down, and for a split second, just a flash, I saw the outline of him, heavy and unmistakable under the thin, soaked fabric. Heat that had nothing to do with the sun surged through me. I tore my eyes away fast, heart pounding. Jesus. This was Jake. My best friend. And it wasn't the first time lately that I'd caught myself looking. Thinking. "You good, man?" Jake asked, swimming closer, his brow creased in mock concern. Too close. I could smell the river on him, that clean, earthy scent mixed with something that was just Jake. Yeah, just cold, I lied, laughing it off. I punched his arm lightly, and he splashed me again, but there was a flicker in his eyes, something I couldn't quite name. Or maybe I was imagining it, wanting it. We floated for a while, letting the current carry us in slow circles. Jake drifted close enough that our shoulders brushed every time the river rocked us together. Neither of us moved away. "You ever think about how easy it is out here?" Jake said suddenly, voice low. I turned my head. "What do you mean?" "Just, no rules. No bullshit. Nobody watching," he said, glancing at me sidelong. His hand drifted lazily in the water between us, brushing against my thigh. "An accident. Had to be." "Yeah," I said, my voice tight. "Easy." But it wasn't easy. Not with the way my skin lit up where he touched me. Not with the way his words hung heavy between us, charged with a meaning I was too scared to name. Jake let himself float onto his back, arms spread wide, face tipped up to the sun. His body moved lazily with the water, trunks riding low on his hip. I caught myself staring again, the curve of muscle, the trail of hair leading down, the heavy bulge outlined by wet fabric. I wanted to look away. I didn't. And somewhere deep inside, something gave a tiny, almost imperceptible crack in the wall I'd built around myself for years. A thought slipped through, dark and dangerous. What if he wanted me to look? I sucked in a breath, turning sharply toward the bank. "I'm getting out," I said, wading through the shallows, trying to hide the shakiness in my voice. Jake's laughter floated after me. "Chicken." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I needed space. Sanity. Because if I stayed in that water, if he touched me again, even by accident, I wasn't sure what I'd do. Or what I'd let happen. As I climbed onto the rocks and grabbed my towel, I heard the splash of Jake following behind. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. I could feel him there, close enough to reach out and touch. And deep down, a terrible, thrilling part of me wanted him to. The sun was sinking lower now, bleeding gold and orange across the river, but the heat between us hadn't cooled. If anything, it thickened, humming under my skin like static. Jake flopped down onto the sun-warmed rocks beside me, water pooling around him in dark patches. He stretched out, arms behind his head, muscles flexing under the skin, totally at ease. Meanwhile, I sat stiffly, towel clenched in my hands, trying not to look. Failing. "You always this jumpy?" Jake teased, cocking an eyebrow at me. "Maybe I just don't like being manhandled," I shot back, forcing a grin. Jake chuckled, a low, rough sound. "Could have fooled me," he said, and there was a note there. Something just a little too sharp, a little too knowing. Before I could unpack it, he surged to his feet, droplets flying, and grabbed my wrist. "Come on. One more swim before we lose the light." I stumbled after him, protesting half-heartedly, but Jake just laughed and yanked me toward the water. We crashed in together, and for a few wild seconds, it was just limbs and laughter and the river rushing around us. He grabbed me around the waist, lifting me with ease, and for one insane moment I felt his body against mine. Solid, hot even through the cold water, and I didn't move. I didn't want to. His hand slid accidentally, or maybe not, across my hip, fingers brushing low enough to make my breath catch. Jake must have felt it too, the way I stiffened, because he loosened his grip a fraction but didn't let go. "You alright, man?" he asked, voice low, close against my ear. "Yeah," I rasped, and it sounded like a lie even to me. The sun dipped lower, throwing long shadows across the water. We floated aimlessly, bodies drifting close again and again. Every accidental brush of his knee against mine, every nudge of shoulder to shoulder, sparked something electric between us. I tried to tell myself it was innocent, that I was reading too much into it. But then there were his eyes, lingering, heavy-lidded, and the way his hands didn't seem to mind finding me under the surface. At one point, Jake ducked underwater, swimming toward the deeper part of the bend. I watched him go, muscles cutting through the water in smooth, powerful strokes. He surfaced 20 feet away, slicking his hair back with both hands, his chest heaving. "Race you," he shouted. I rolled my eyes but started swimming anyway, slow at first, then faster, pushing through the current. Halfway there, he met me under the water, grabbing me around the waist again. I twisted to break free, laughing, and somehow we ended up grappling, legs tangling, chests bumping, the river wrapping around us like a living thing. Under the surface, it was impossible to pretend. My hand brushed against him, lower than it should have. I yanked back, startled, but Jake didn't flinch, didn't pull away. He grabbed my wrist instead, holding it there, eyes locking onto mine even through the water. Time slowed. The river roared in my ears, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. Jake surfaced first, dragging in a breath, his hand still around my wrist. I followed, gasping, blinking river water from my eyes. For a second we just stared at each other, chest to chest, breathing hard. Then he smiled, slow, easy, dangerous. He let go, but the imprint of his fingers stayed on my skin. I drifted back a few feet, needing space to think, to breathe. But it was useless. The damage was done. Jake floated lazily nearby, pretending like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just turned my whole world upside down with a single, casual touch. "You've been weird lately," he said after a while, almost too casually. "Have not," I muttered, treading water. Jake shrugged, smirking. "Maybe it's just me then." "Yeah. Maybe." The river carried us apart and back together, over and over, like it had a mind of its own. Every time we bumped, every time our legs tangled underwater, it got harder to pretend I didn't want it. That I didn't want him. Jake floated onto his back again, eyes closed, his trunks riding even lower now, exposing a dangerous amount of skin. The outline of him was clearer than ever, bold and obvious under the thin fabric. He caught me looking. I knew it because when he cracked one eye open, the smirk was still there, not mocking, not cruel. Just knowing. My face burned. I turned sharply, swimming toward the shallow edge again. "Scared you're gonna lose the race?" Jake called after me, that teasing lilt in his voice. "Just tired of babysitting your slow ass," I shot back without turning around. He laughed, the sound warm and easy, and somehow that made it worse. By the time I hauled myself out onto the rocks again, Jake was right behind me. He stood there dripping, shaking water from his hair like a dog, then dropped down beside me with a heavy thud. We sat in silence, the sky turning violet above us, the heat between us humming louder than ever. My skin felt too tight, my heartbeat too loud. Jake stretched again, sprawling back on his elbows, legs spread carelessly. His thigh brushed mine, a slow, deliberate pressure that he didn't bother pulling away. Neither did I. And for the first time all day, I stopped pretending I didn't know what was happening. The air between us pulsed, heavy and electric, neither of us moving, neither of us willing to be the first to break whatever fragile thing had settled in the space we shared. Jake leaned back on his hands, his body sprawled carelessly close, his bare thigh still brushing mine. His swim trunks, still wet, clung low to his hips, outlining everything in a way that made it impossible to think straight. He caught me looking again, didn't flinch, didn't tease this time. Just watched me, the corners of his mouth twitching like he was holding back a secret. "You ever wonder?" He started, then trailed off, gaze drifting to the slow-moving river. I swallowed hard. "Wonder what?" Jake was quiet for a long beat, the kind of silence that stretches and strains and threatens to snap. "Wonder if maybe you missed something," he said finally, voice low and rough. "Something that was right in front of you." I turned my head slowly, heart thudding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "Like what?" Jake shrugged one shoulder. "Like maybe we weren't just messing around all those times. Maybe there was more." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to answer, needed to, but my mouth was dry, my body frozen in place. For years, I'd buried every look, every touch, every moment that could have meant more than friendship. I shoved them deep down, locked them away. Jake was dragging them back up to the surface now, laying them bare between us. Without thinking, I shifted closer, the rough rock digging into my palms. Jake's eyes flicked down to my mouth, then back up, his chest rising and falling faster. His thigh pressed harder into mine, deliberate now, no accident. "If you're fucking with me," I said, my voice shaking. Jake leaned in, so close I could see the droplets clinging to his lashes. "I'm not." The space between us vanished. 1 second, we were sitting there, on the edge of something dangerous. The next, Jake's hand was on the back of my neck, and he was pulling me toward him. The first brush of his mouth against mine was clumsy, unsure. But when I didn't pull away, when I pressed back, desperate and reckless, he groaned low in his throat and deepened the kiss. It was messy, hungry, all teeth and heat and years of tension snapping loose at once. His fingers tangled in my hair, tugging just enough to make me gasp against his mouth. My hands roamed without permission, across the hard line of his back, the slick heat of his skin, memorizing him in frantic, greedy strokes. Jake shifted, pressing me down against the rocks, his weight settling on top of me. His hips ground against mine, and there was no hiding it, the hard line of him pressing against me, the way he shuddered when I rocked up to meet him. Every sound he made went straight to my gut, a raw, needy ache that scared the hell out of me. This was Jake. Jake, who I was supposed to protect, to joke with, to trust. Not kiss. Not touch. Not want. But I did. God, I did. I slid my hands lower, down the planes of his back, over the curve of his ass, pulling him closer. Jake gasped against my mouth, grinding harder. His swim trunks shifted, and suddenly there was nothing between us but the thin, soaked fabric. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes dark, pupils blown wide. "You want this?" he rasped, voice wrecked. I nodded, unable to form words, and that was enough. He dove back in, claiming my mouth again, his hands everywhere, leaving trails of fire across my skin. We lost ourselves there, on the rocks, in the fading light, in each other. Every kiss, every desperate touch was a rebellion against everything we were supposed to be. Friendship, loyalty, rules. None of it mattered anymore. When he finally pulled away, both of us breathing like we'd run a marathon, the guilt hit me like a wave. I sat up too fast, scrubbing a hand over my face like I could erase what we'd done. Jake watched me quietly, tension stiffening his body. "This changes everything," I said hoarsely. Jake's mouth twisted in a grimace that was half smile, half sadness. "Yeah, it does." We sat there, shoulders brushing, not touching anymore. The river kept moving, uncaring. The sky had darkened to deep blue, the first stars pricking through. "You regret it already?" Jake asked, voice low. I looked at him, really looked at him, and my heart twisted painfully. There was no undoing it. No pretending it hadn't happened. We'd crossed the line, and the ground we stood on now was unfamiliar, unstable. But under the fear, under the guilt, something else burned hotter. Want. Still alive. Still hungry. I shook my head slowly. "No. I don't." Jake's shoulders sagged in visible relief. He didn't reach for me again, didn't need to. The damage was done. The pull between us was undeniable now, tangled and messy and inevitable. We sat in silence as the last light bled out of the sky, side by side, two idiots too stubborn to admit they'd been falling into this for years. The drive back was quiet. Jake's fingers tapped absently against the steering wheel, a restless rhythm that matched the jittery beat of my heart. The truck's windows were down, and the night air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet earth and something electric, like a storm waiting to break. Neither of us spoke. What could we say? The weight of what had happened, what we had done, filled the small cab like a third body. I glanced sideways at him. Jake's jaw was tight, his gaze locked on the dark road ahead. His hair was still damp, curling slightly at the temples. His swim trunks clung stubbornly to him, a reminder of the river, of the rocks, of his mouth on mine. I shifted in my seat, trying to find a position that didn't make me painfully aware of how much I still wanted him. How much I wasn't ready to pretend it hadn't happened. "You're overthinking again," Jake said suddenly, cutting through the thick silence. I barked a short laugh. "You're not thinking enough." Jake smirked, but there was a crack in it now, a sliver of uncertainty he couldn't hide. "Maybe I'm tired of thinking." The words sat between us, daring me to pick them up, to answer. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have told him all the things tangled inside me, the fear, the hunger, the guilt, the reckless hope. But instead, I stared out the window, watching the trees blur into shadows. The truck rattled over the gravel as we pulled into my driveway. Jake killed the engine but didn't move. His hand stayed on the wheel, gripping it like he needed something solid to hold on to. "You gonna invite me in?" he asked, voice casual, but his knuckles were white. I hesitated. The right answer was no. End it now. Draw the line clean before we slipped any deeper. But the right answer tasted like ash in my mouth. I opened the door, climbed out. I didn't look to see if he followed. I didn't have to. His footsteps crunched behind me, steady, sure. Inside, the house felt different. Smaller. Hotter. I kicked the door shut behind us, and for a moment we just stood there, soaked towels forgotten in our hands, water dripping onto the hardwood floor. Jake dropped his towel first, letting it fall with a wet slap. He stepped forward, close enough that I could feel the heat rolling off his skin. "You sure?" he asked, voice a rough whisper. I didn't answer with words. I grabbed the front of his swim trunks and pulled him into me. Jake crashed into me with a growl, mouth finding mine, hands threading into my hair, gripping hard. There was no hesitation now, no slow build, no careful exploration. This was frantic, desperate, a hunger that had been denied too long. He shoved me against the wall, pressing his whole body against mine. His hands roamed everywhere, my chest, my hips, my ass, mapping me like he needed to memorize every inch. I pushed his trunks down, and he did the same to me, clumsy and impatient. We fumbled and laughed breathlessly into each other's mouths, not caring about anything but getting closer. When our bodies finally met, bare and burning, it was like a dam breaking. Jake groaned low and filthy against my neck, rocking against me, his breath hot and ragged. "Fuck," he whispered. "Been thinking about this. Longer than I should've." I kissed him harder, swallowing the confession. My hands slid down his back, urging him closer, deeper. Every thrust of his hips, every desperate clutch of his fingers in my skin, stripped away another layer of guilt, another excuse, until there was nothing left but need. And God, it felt good to stop fighting it, to stop pretending. Afterward, we collapsed onto the floor, a tangle of limbs and shallow breathing. Sweat cooled on our skin. Jake rested his head against my shoulder, his arm thrown lazily across my stomach like he had every right to be there. Maybe he did. I stared up at the ceiling, the old fan spinning lazy circles overhead. My body ached in ways I hadn't known it could, good ways, right ways. But the question still lurked, just outside the edge of this fragile piece. What happens now? Was this a mistake we could shove into the past, or something we were going to have to live with? Jake shifted beside me, propping himself up on one elbow. His fingers traced idle patterns across my chest, slow and thoughtful. "You freaking out yet?" he asked, teasing, but there was real concern in his eyes. "A little," I admitted, because lying felt stupid now. Jake nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. "We'll figure it out," he said simply. Like it was that easy. Like the real world, the expectations, the labels, the fallout, couldn't touch us here, in this messy, sacred space we'd carved out for ourselves. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe we could keep this, whatever this was, safe. Jake leaned down, kissing the corner of my mouth, soft and sure. "You're not alone," he murmured. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. We lay there in the quiet, skin to skin, hearts still pounding out some frantic, shared rhythm. Outside, the night thickened. The river kept moving. The world turned. And so did we, into something new, something dangerous, something ours.